Wait a bit. Hang on, man. It's a little better. Now we got a little bit of money. We're going to do two things.
That's better. Thank you.
What we'll do is, first, obviously we'll read the meter, and then we'll take it to the meter shop and test. Yeah. Yeah, in fact, I put it in there, meter shop today. Absolutely. Typically, 98%, we ready yet? Yes, sir. Okay. Okay, what I need to hold this one. You can put it right.
That should work.
Right here? What do I need to do? Right here? Thanks everybody for being here.
John, turn it on.
There we go. Is that better? Okay. Okay, I got it. Okay, thanks everybody for being here. You all should have an agenda in front of you. We have three major items on the agenda. The third item, which is this 4-month progress report, we want to very quickly go over some of the progress we've made over the first 4 months. But toward the end of the presentation, it's very much looking forward, and I really want to get your guys' input into things because we got a lot of work to do over the next 3 months before we come up with a recommendation of what the future Pritchard Water is going to look like. So let me get started. First item, we had one action item coming out of the last meeting. There was a question asked about the insurance coverage with respect to the fraud, and did we have any coverage? The answer to that is yes. We had $50,000 worth of coverage. It was for one person, one event. Unfortunately, actions had to be taken within a certain time frame to be able to file a claim, and the board did not take those actions. The fraud was discovered in late 21, early 22. They had to immediately notify the insurance carrier. They had to submit some affidavits. They had to assist in the investigation, and then they had a certain period of time where the claim would come back. Nothing was filed, and so I think we lost the ability to cover that. In fact, I know we've lost that ability to recover the $50,000. So, okay, so that's the first item. So let me get into 3 items here. The next item on the agenda was backflow prevention. You guys may think, okay, that's kind of a techie thing, but I'll be honest with you, this is the most important thing that we've done to protect public health since I've been here. Let me explain. Well, we have some experts here, but let me explain backflow prevention for you. You have a marker? So when we put new meters in all the homes, okay? And so you have a line coming into the home, and then you have a meter that obviously measures the flow. And then immediately downstream of that, you have what we call a double check valve. Okay, so water flows through the meter and flows through these valves, which flip up as they go through. And then water goes into the home. What this does do is if there's a pressure drop in the distribution system, and so the pressure, there could be a fire where you're taking water out of hydrants. There could be what they call water hammer in the system. The pressure drops here such that the pressure in the house, this is your house, and this is the water system. The pressure is higher in the house, water will flow back to the system and contaminate the drinking water that you have in the system. So these double check valves prevent that from flowing back. Now, generally in a residential house, that's all you need to do it. Where it's really critical is if you have a commercial establishment, a dry cleaning establishment, or an industry. If water comes into that industry and you have drinking water going one direction, and then you have the processed water that you need to use in your manufacturing process going the other direction, and you have some sort of pressure change here, you can get very dangerous processed water, even going the drinking water within the structure or back into the distribution system. So these types require much more sophisticated backflow preventers to separate the processed water from the drinking water. This has huge public health implications if it's not done properly. Now, unfortunately, Pritchard Water is one of the few utilities in the country that does not have a backflow prevention program. And Aiden got with us, and that was one of the things in the consent order they required us to do. So we've actually implemented the program. Every commercial industrial customer is getting a letter with information on testing their backflow preventer. And every year they have to get a certified backflow preventer tester that we're providing them a list. The tester test it and send it back to us and say it's working properly. Okay? And there's 600 or so within the Pritchard system that have that proper backflow prevention. So while this may seem small, it is huge for public health protection and should have been done 10 years ago.
Are you saying that we never had it? Is that what you said?
We did not have a backflow prevention program. And if you read the water consent order that we signed in February, and you read the past inspection reports by EPA and by ADEM, you'll see they recognize that as a deficiency. So we've corrected that.
Okay, has it always been a requirement?
Yes. Okay, so that's number one. Any questions on the backflow prevention program? What we've included in your handout is the cover letter we're sending to all the customers, what they have to fill out to prove that the backflow preventer works. We provide them a list of all the certified testers. We've also provided, if a new customer comes to the system, we send him a form that he can take a look at what type of processed water he has, and there he can select the proper backflow preventers. There's many different types of backflow preventers.
And what's the rough cost to put one in?
Well, on the residential side, you're not going to need to do it.
On the commercial side.
Oh, it's going to be several $1,000s. Yeah, but extremely important.
And they would be a commercial aspect of it, they would have to pay for it.
They have to pay for the backflow preventer, and I'm assuming most of these systems already have it in, and we're just not testing it to make sure it's working. I believe any reputable commercial or industrial customer knows that they should be doing this. We just don't know if they're doing it, and we don't know whether they're being tested every year. Okay, so I'm hoping that when we send the letters out, which the letters are going out over the next couple of weeks, you know, people will get back and give us test results. They're not going to get back to us and say we don't have a backflow preventer. Because if they don't have a backflow preventer, we have a real problem. We'll have to go and mandate that they do it. Okay. Okay, so that's what the backflow prevention is all about. Really, really important. Okay, let me get into the 8M grant funding. Hopefully, most of you saw an 8M press release yesterday. Let me give you a little background on that. As you know, I've been spending a lot of time in Montgomery, working with 8M. You know, we did have the water consent order that the first deliverable was due at the end of February. And that got into doing a hydraulic study that we talked about at the last meeting. It got to addressing the backflow prevention, got into training and writing policies and procedures, and got into an assessment of all of our tanks. We owed them all those reports by the end of February. We got them in, and we're starting slowly building credibility with 8M. So with that credibility, we were back out there last week, meeting actually with the director of 8M. He was in the meeting, you know, all day long, which was great. And they agreed to provide grant funds. In your handouts, your pre-read is the applications that we put together within a week, record time for them. It's what's called a pre-application and a preliminary engineering report. We've submitted with 4 projects that we thought were critical. 8M asked us to prioritize the projects based on consent order, needing to comply with consent orders, addressing leakage, and improving the operations of the system. Acquisition system, which basically allows you to monitor and control all the pumps and valves that you have in your system. I was shocked when I first came here. A system this big that operates blind with no controls at all. We don't know what the water levels in our tanks are. We don't know what pumps are operating. Our treatment plants run unmanned with no controls. And so this will provide that important project. Additionally, they also are funding some additional audits. So do you have the press release, just in case people haven't seen it? This came out yesterday morning from 8M. Yeah. So what they've given us is $5.8 million in grant funds, and the intent is to spend all of that this year. 4 million of it is going to be on tanks. We have 5 tanks within the system. I talked about the hydraulic analysis last time. 1 tank is so low that it serves no value. That's the sandpipe at the office. That will be demolished. It actually is a hindrance on the system because water sits in there, gets stagnant, and doesn't flow in and out of the tank. We're going to take that down. The other 4 tanks, we're going to strip the paint off, which is old lead paint, which means you actually have to shroud the tank so the lead paint doesn't fly all over the neighborhoods. And then we're gonna paint both the inside and outside of all 4 tanks. We're gonna They also have some backflow prevention problems on that. We're gonna put some valves in, and we're gonna do some piping changes and whatever. All that work we hope to get done this year. So you're actually gonna see work being done on those 4 tanks this year. The other projects, the Lovejoy Loop pipeline, we're gonna be designing this year. The improvements to the Morris wastewater treatment plant, we're gonna be designing this year. And the SCADA system, or the monitoring controls, we're gonna be designing this year. The goal is to have bids back in by the end of this year, and then ADEM has unofficially agreed, and they say right in their thing, this is a jump start, our first step. They have $15 million allocated for those projects for 25 and 26. So we'll be able to move forward with those projects. Additionally, at our last meeting in Montgomery, the bond trustee was there, which ADEM wanted them to come to the meeting. And they've asked the bond trustee to provide some funds as well into the future. Now, the bond trustee needs to go back and talk to the bondholders because it requires a number of changes to the documents associated with bonds, because the bonds were issued for certain projects. Those projects are now probably going to change, and they have to make some decisions. But that's all really, really good news, that those projects will start moving forward. Okay, I'm going to be totally transparent. I've been totally transparent. I'm going to be a little bit more transparent. So if you take a look at the second sheet here, this is actually what we received today from ADEM. This is part of the document that we need to sign. So the recipient of the grant money, this $5.8 million that's going to be spent this year, is the utility. However, ADEM was not going to give the money unless the receiver was the responsible person. Okay? And I'll be frank, it's because they didn't have any confidence in the board. So this money, I guess if I disappear, this money potentially disappears as well. Not that it's not going to come back, but basically you have to reapply for the money, whatever entity is going to be in my place. Just being really frank about that. Okay. Any questions on that?
What do you mean by you?
Well, right now, for instance, in the Supreme Court, the existing board is challenging the receivership in the Supreme Court. If they win that, the receiver goes away and the board goes back in place.
You said you got to reapply.
And then they have to reapply for this money.
You said earlier on the day,
Can't give it to whoever.
25, 26.
Yeah, we haven't got that money yet, but they're prepared to give it to me if I'm in place. The other thing is, I'll be frank, the bondholders at some point may decide, let's just walk away from this whole thing. And in that case, the receiver goes away as well, and the board goes back into place. So I'm not saying any of those are likely, but they certainly can happen.
I have a question. What kind of money did this money come out of?
But this is ARPA money. That doesn't, the next tranche of money might be ARPA money, or it might be BIL money, which is the bipartisan, yeah.
So these are federal dollars
Yes,
that came to the state of Alabama
2-some billion worth, yeah. Came to the state of Alabama, yeah.
for water infrastructure.
Well, it came in as the overall, relief package that,
And it was given to ADEM.
Yeah.
And ADEM has allocated this for water infrastructure, or a part of that money for water.
I don't know how ADEM broke it up, but obviously they've allocated some for Pritchard and have some on the back burner for 25, 26 as well.
So I guess my question is, based on the statement that you just made, how can they make a stipulation that it's tied to one person? If it's federal
It's tied to the receivership. It's not tied to me, it's tied to the receivership. See, ADEM has to have a comfort level that what the money that they're given is going to be properly spent in a proper amount of time.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Right.
Receivership is not you because you are the receiver.
They could there could be another receiver brought in.
Okay, so my question is, how can they do that with federal dollars?
They control these dollars. They were given to the state of Alabama as part of the ARPA funding, and then they control how these dollars are allocated. And I'm only doing this to be just totally transparent, what I've been told, and I had conversations with them again today, just to make sure I had it right, and they confirmed it. I just got these applications, I just got these contracts assigned today.
So the way I interpret that, is the money is given so long as there is a receiver, and it's a receiver that they qualify or pay.
Well,
You're currently a receiver that's qualified in their mind now. And if you leave, they want to have the ability to make sure that it's put in case in a receiver's hands, something that they have some form of say, so that they're protecting the state's dollar.
that is correct, and they may, if the board reapplies, automatically give it to the board as well, but they want to make sure that this money, they know how this money is being controlled and managed, or they give it. Right now, they're comfortable giving this money under this situation. If the situation changes, or the responsible person changes, they want to have the opportunity to look at it again.
May I say something?
Yeah.
I would like to share with the board members here that that's not new information. When we went to Aiden before for money, the same thing was expressed to us, and when I say us, that's the United Citizens. When we got on the agenda, they expressed to us that, if I recall correctly, so that money comes from EPA or from the federal government, and then they are the ones, Aiden determines how that money is spent. And at that time, they said boldly that they were not sending any money to the city of Pritchard because they didn't feel that we were, and I'm paraphrasing now, please, that we were able to sufficiently handle the money. And we went down to the commission meeting, and now I'm speaking of the Mobile County Commission. And if I'm not mistaken, it was $5 million in that situation, where, and when I say we, I'm talking about the United Concerned Citizens, where we requested that $5 million be held up until we came under a different leadership or whatever the situation may be, but that did not happen. So I just want this advisory board to know that the process has always been accepted.
Let me ask you another question. You said, oh, that file. If they reinstate the board, can the board hire your firm can they come back and quit? Can they do that?
I mean, I don't know, that's really ADEM's decision. The board has to come back with a plan, and ADEM needs to approve that plan. One correction, it's not the city of Pritchard that it was the utility that ADEM has problems, not necessarily the city of Pritchard, right?
When I say city, I'm talking about.
I know, I know.
Just a clarification of why I was asking about.
Yeah.
Whether it was, I do know that the state of Alabama and ADM may have an opinion or may have some overlays that they try to implement, but I do know that federal dollars have their own regulations in the way that they're supposed to be spent, and that the state cannot supersede those regulations.
That is correct, but most of the money, that comes from the federal government that goes into water and wastewater goes into the SRF programs at the states.
Right.
And under the SRF program, the state has the right, and the federal government recognizes that right, to take a look at the capacity and capabilities of who they're lending money to, especially the case here where it's grant money. If this was money being lent, we would never get it because we don't have audits and our financial situation is so bad. So this is somewhat unique, but they have the right to assess the body that
But
they're
they
lending
don't
money.
have the right to violate federal law.
No, but what I'm saying here is what they're doing is consistent with federal law. Okay? No, you're absolutely right.
So I have one question.
Yeah.
The funds that are potentially to be provided are now being provided. It's going to the receivership, and you'll be able to directly write the checks to whatever those situations.
What I do is, as the invoices come in, I approve the invoices and I submit them to ADEM for them to write them a check.
So what's being asked? And if that's the case, then even the board, if they would receive the money, they would have to submit as well in order to.
That's not the issue. The issue is, will you move forward with the right project, speed, and all of that, which has not historically happened.
But I just want to be clear on this particular issue, and that is, you're not in full control of the funding.
No.
And so if the board is in place, they don't have any way of misusing those particular funds themselves.
See, ADEM has not given, this grant money is not a bunch of money that you can use for any projects you want. This is allocated to 4 and 5 specific projects.
That's what.
However, the utility, I could slow down the projects, I could stop the projects. I can do all of those things, and that money then would not be available to help the utility. That's the concern. That's how things have been managed in the past. And I haven't been here, and all I am doing is parroting what I've heard from ADEM. Okay?
All right, I totally disagree with that premise, but it is what it is.
I have been under the impression, I could be wrong, but that ADM would allocate money to the board and no one else. And that's what I under the impression.
This money is coming to the utility, and I am responsible for that. If the receivership goes away, the money can still go to the utility, but the ADEM gets another chance to look at it and make sure they still want to move forward with the grant. Okay. Okay, any other questions? By the way, on the county, we all know that there was $5 million that was going to be allocated. Obviously, we talked to the county a lot. That money is not available. Clearly, they're looking for some additional money, but right now, I'm not banking on any money coming from the county other than the money that the $1.5 million they gave a year or so ago, that we now have about $900,000 left that we use primarily to fix leaks and take care of sewer overflows and things such as that.
Sir, I didn't hear that, where you say the $5 million that they allocated.
That's not available anymore.
Oh, okay.
But they did give us $1.5 million last year, and we kind of working our way through that. We are also working with EPA still. And if, Greg, you were up in Durham, were you up at the environment? Yeah, okay. So I mean, call upon your help. I'm also working with that group. I'm working with Alabama A&M right now, they basically have delegated, the group up in Durham has now delegated that to Alabama A&M to work with them. And we see if we can get some grant money out of that as well. I just got the email yesterday. It's a professor at A&M. It's not her. I'll get you the name. Okay. And in fact, I'm going to try to set up a meeting if you want to participate in the meeting.
Yeah.
Be happy to have whoever I can to help me through the process here. Okay. Okay. What I'd like to do next is really quickly, but if anybody has any questions, just go through. This is kind of at a 4-month place now. Just go through some of the progress and changes that have been made. And I'll do that very quickly. But at the end of this is a looking forward, because we have 3 months before we need to make a decision on what Pritchard Water looks like in the future. And I want to go through some of the decisions that need to be made on, in that process, just so you understand, what we're looking at and get your input on other things you may want us to look at in that process. So let me, this first slide here just basically says, this is what the receiver order says, but at a very high level, the things that I need to do. I need to comply with regulations. I need to identify deficiencies within the system, and comply with his consent orders. Get as much free stuff as I can on the technical or financial side, which obviously we're working on. Rates, we're not going to do anything with rates at least through 2024 and possibly beyond, because you can't do rates until you can figure out what it costs to run the system. And we don't know what it costs to run the system. You need to know what it costs to operate the system and how much capital dollars you need. So we have an asset management study going on right now, and end of May, we'll know what the long-term capital needs are. It's probably going to be north of $100 million, but we don't know what the actual number is. So when we get a better feel for what the future utility is going to look like, then we can figure out. Jim?
We received a question.
Okay.
John, can the receiver, the source of the 500,000 or $500,000 you just referenced, when he gets a moment, remember? Can you read that? I can't.
In the receiver.
I'll explain it.
Okay.
I'm simply saying, just talking about, and I tried to find that and I don't know, I didn't hear that somebody was born, and somebody just said, what, $500,000 that did not.
It's, we're getting $5.8 million of grant funds, and it's being allocated to 5 different projects. One is a wastewater plant, one is a large pipeline.
Another question. $5 million capital.
When I first got here, there was discussions about possibly $5 million coming from the county. That money, I've been told by the county, is no longer available. Yeah, yes. Yes. Okay, so why don't you go to the next slide, so we'll get into, so what we've done is kind of broken down into the various areas. We've talked about all of these topics at the meeting, but I just want to go through very quickly, because we've talked about them fragmented, just one. You need to have maybe a good idea of, how they all go together. So from the operational side, I've spent very little time talking about the staff at Pritchard Water. And, my job is not only to go find money and do things like that, but we actually have a group of people working there. And these people are hugely dedicated, and they're working with very few resources and very little training, and they're really doing the best that they can do. And we have a bunch of open positions, and we're fixing leaks every day. So I've been trying through the personnel board and other ways, trying to fill all those positions. As you can also manage in the receivership, we changed all the financial controls because I have to sign off on everything, and all the contracts are now with the receiver and not with the water board. So there's been a lot of work we had to do there in the transition. We've hired a firm with 8M grant money to look for leaks. They're now shooting, they have to get this done before the trees come out. They're shooting from the satellites. When the trees come out, you can't see the water as well, and that's going on. We've identified some cost savings. We've looked at things like uniforms and security and some maintenance things that we think we can save some money on. And then, interestingly enough, we had a crew of engineers here for 2 weeks. There was 6 engineers in the crew. They went around to every piece of equipment in the water and wastewater system, 1,200 of them, pumps, valves, electrical gear, whatever, and wrote down all the information on those systems. Why is that valuable? One, it tells you what the conditions of these things are, but more importantly, they've never had a maintenance management system here. So most utilities have a maintenance management system where they take all their pieces that they have, put it into the system and say, okay, this one has to be oiled every 6 months, and this one has to have this done, and this one has to do this done. And so every week when you come in, what pops out of the maintenance management system is where I have to spend money. And that prolongs the life of your assets. Now that we're going to start putting in new assets, we need to start doing things right. So that's the foundation. We're not going to put the system in, but we have the foundation, the data for it, put it in. So, yeah.
I'm just surprised that ADM would make decisions that they have with what to do with the money when 60% of the water is being lost. I would think a great deal more would go into infrastructure to save money. All this stuff we're doing, we still losing the money.
Okay, so let me tell you, and I'll say it again. 8M specifically asked us to prioritize. Number one is the consent order stuff. So we have a wastewater treatment plants that aren't meeting the discharge requirements that are going into the rivers and polluting. We have sanitary sewer overflows that are going up and affecting public health. We have our tanks. You can read right in the press release. They talk about the mildew and other stuff on our tanks. All those things impact public health. And to me, and in 8M, public health is number one.
But doesn't flow water affect, if the flow of water is not strong enough, this is what, Aubrey told me, that there are bacteria can get in that water if it's not flowing strong enough. And if we're losing the water through the pipes, then doesn't that affect the flow?
Yes, but the pressure in the line that occurs, which doesn't happen very often. The amount of flow you have in the pipe, as long as you have adequate pressure, which is dictated by your tanks, is not going to allow influx of bacteria. But we are addressing that. So the first thing is the public health. The second is 50,000 feet of pipe we're replacing on the Lovejoy Loop, which is a major source of leakage in the system. Okay, that's the biggest project. That's a $9 million project. That's in this mix. We're going to do the design this year, but when I go get the next 15, 20 million next year in 2025 and 2026, the most of that money is going to be spent on pipe. Okay, so we are addressing the leakage problem. Then we also have the Alabama Village thing, which working with the mayor and the housing authority, that's going to help the leakage as well. Okay, but I will tell you, 8M is not going to give us any money for Alabama Village. That's going to have to be done, between the housing authority, the city, and the utility to get this thing done. Okay?
Still, I'd like to go back to the maintenance part that you talked about. Now, did you say we did not have a maintenance program?
We do not. We have kind of a break and fix program. When something breaks, we fix it.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
When something breaks, we fix it. We don't really have the data to do a sophisticated maintenance management program. And we're collecting this data now as part of the asset management study.
Because we were under the impression at one time that it was a maintenance, and it may be two different things. That's why I'm really asking for clarification, that at one time it was a maintenance program set in place, and then when the new administration got in, they canceled that particular maintenance program period, and then we had nothing. But that sound like what I'm hearing you say, we never had.
Well, I can't tell you what was going on 5 years ago. All I can tell you is when I walked in, there was no
Oh, that's correct, and I understand. All right.
In our progress report, shouldn't we have in there where we talk about the affordability studies and?
I'll get to that. Okay, next slide. Thank you, Fred. Okay, so next slide. Here we go. Okay, what I want to do, the other thing here, I think we're confusing people. These are the contracts that the receivers entered into over the last 4 months. And I just wanted to make it clear that what we entered into, what it does, and what the funding source is. So you can see the first one is the leak detection. That was funded by 8M. And then we have 3 engineering contracts. 2 of them were done by 8M. One was financed through bond funds that the bond trustee made available. We have Community Unlimited, which is helping us write operating procedures and training. They're doing that at no cost to us. We have the affordability study, which is being financed through bond funds. And the 3 things that are coming out of the operating budget is lawyers. Now, so what's happened is when I come in, the lawyer for the existing lawyer for the utility walked out, and I bring my own lawyer. So basically, my lawyer has sat down in the seat of the previous lawyer in the utility. There's some minor extra costs associated, but generally the cost is an offset. And then the bottom two things are dealing with transparency. One is our website developer and the person who's doing the live stream today, and Jim, who's helping with the communications and community engagement. So they are the contracts that I've issued since I've been there. I just want to make sure everybody kind of sees it in one place.
Do we have the cost of those?
Yeah, actually, they're on the Fitz Pritchard Water website. We have all the contracts on the website. Now, some of them, like the lawyer, because that's kind of an ongoing thing, so it's dependent on how much work comes in. That dictates how much the lawyer charges. Gym works depends upon how many press calls I get or something like that. But all the rest are fixed prices that I can give you.
I have a question.
Yes.
The meeting that the water board had a week ago or so, and the lawyer was there. Now, who paid for that lawyer?
So so I'm obligated to pay for the lead. So right now they're in the Alabama Supreme Court challenging the receivership. The board is challenging the trustee. I'm not a party to that, but we are paying the legal fees on both sides. We're paying the legal fees for the trustee, and we're paying the legal fees for the existing board. And that came, yeah, and that's coming from the judge. The judge is requiring me to cover both of those legal fees. So if they were talking about the appeal of the bond default receiver order, then that can be charged. If they were talking about other business, then they cannot charge it to the water board.
That's the order. John, make it clear, excuse me, Katie. John, clarify that the order that created the receiver stipulated that.
Well, here's what actually happened. So there was the order for the receiver. And then the board decided that they were going to challenge it. Okay, they were going to challenge it at the Supreme Court. I wrote a letter to the board saying I was no longer to cover the board's costs or their legal fees. And the judge basically came back and said, okay, you're all right not paying the board, but you have to cover the legal fees in the appeal process. So I'm paying the trustees and the board's legal fees in the appeal process. And it's going to be about $200,000. Okay? Yeah.
On page the next volume, the reason they let them go was because of change order. When they took that bid, it was a little over 2 million. By the time they let them go, they were up to near the 6 million. Now you can talk to the board and they can tell you these. They don't need to be on our list.
I talked to them about all of that. I went through the whole process of how it was managed. They're a very reputable firm. They're managing the automatic meter reading project right now. They're managing the groundwater project right now under the previous board, not under me. I've had 30 years worth of work with them, as I have with major consulting firms. They are the best firm for this job. Now, the rest of the work we're going to do, we're going to spread it around to other firms. But right now, for those 3 projects, they are best.
Are you gonna bid that?
Don't know yet. The problem we have is, I have to develop detailed schedules. It's time. It's time. Just to give you an idea here, we want to do the design of this Lovejoy Loop pipeline this year, get bids so we can have the construction there for the next 2 years. We're having a hard time getting the surveyors out there because it's 9 miles worth of survey work. It could take us, and you can't do the design until you have the survey done. So I know I'm getting the details, but that's the kind of stuff I need to look at, see if I can get it done.
Can we move on?
Yeah, let's move on. I haven't got to the good stuff yet. Okay, regulatory updates. This page right here, remember I told you I had to meet some requirements by the end of February? We did. We got the hydraulic analysis done, the tank improvements, the backflow program, and this Community is Unlimited contractor training. All that was required to be done by the end of February. We got a lot of brownie points with ADEM, getting all that done. Go to next slide. And then, of course, this is what we just talked about from a regulatory update. This is getting the ADEM funding, and then there are the four main projects right there, the 4 bullets that that we're getting design proposals from, and then we'll do the construction of the first bullet, the entire construction this year, and then the construction of the other 3 projects will be done in 2025 and 2026. Yeah. What? You want to go back? Okay, go back, Jim.
What was the Mars WWEP improvement?
Okay, so we have 2 wastewater treatment plants, both of which have challenges meeting their discharge requirements. The Morris wastewater treatment plant, we need to do improvements to what we call the headworks of the plant. That means when the water comes in, you actually screen out the big heavy stuff, and then you have a grit chamber that settles out some of this stuff, and you have some pumps and all that. That's to do that project.
What is Mars?
That's the name of the plant.
That's
Yes, it's not Moaz, it's Morris. Yeah, okay.
John, in a rough guess, if we're taking care of the lead in the tanks, and we're working on the backflow so we're not contaminating water, safety is the biggest component that you're driving the health and safety of the water. Are we getting, by the end of this year, are you projecting we're 50% through the risks to the water, 10%? How much progress are we making at a macro level?
I would say on the water side, we're making significant progress, hard to put a percentage on it, but backflow is a huge exposure, and the tanks are a huge exposure. As long as you
What would
make,
be the next big thing left after this year?
well, the next big thing is on the wastewater side,
I mean, on the water,
replacing pipe
okay.
and leakage. Yeah, I've taken care of pretty much of the health and safety stuff on the water side, and then it's all about leakage, which impacts both health and safety and operating costs. Wastewater side, we've got a long way to go. You've got to remember, I'll be in compliance with our water consent order with what we're doing here. We have a long way to go in the wastewater, and the wastewater is going to drain funds. Yeah.
The regulations on the water side.
Yeah.
And the public will feel a whole lot safer about the water.
Absolutely.
And you guys are saying in the current state that we're in, the water is safe,
Absolutely.
no problem.
Absolutely.
No lead in water, no.
No lead service lines, believe me, I know about lead service lines, no lead service lines. And ADEM in their consent order is not challenging the quality of the water at all. They're challenging the infrastructure we have that holds the water and potentially could contaminate. That's why the tanks is their #1 project. Moz provides excellent quality water, and we don't mess it up too bad when we get it.
Thanks, sorry.
Okay.
How much will the Lovejoy Loop project lower our water loss?
That is a great question, and I wish I could answer it. We're doing the leak detection survey right now. We know, reason we focused on Lovejoy is because we keep track of all the leaks that we have, and there's a tremendous amount of leaks on Lovejoy. But to put an actual number on it right now, maybe 3 months from now, I can put a number on it. I just don't know, but we know it's going to take a big chunk. I could give you a number, but it's going to be wrong. Okay? I just don't know.
I just can't get paid, they not addressing that.
They are. They're giving us $9 million to replace the Lovejoy Loop pipeline, which is the oldest pipeline we have in the system. So they are committed to the leakage.
And that's in addition to the 5.8.
Yes. Yeah. And in that 5.8 is design of that pipeline. There's the third bullet down here, the Lovejoy Loop pipeline replacement. Okay. Next slide, Jim. Okay, so financial, this is kind of the financial update. We will, by the end of May, have the magic answer of what is the 20-year capital program here. Is it going to be 100 million? Is it going to be 150 million? How much money do we need over the next 20 years? That will be the end of May. So at our May Advisory Council meeting, I'm going to have a presentation on the asset management study before we file it with ADEM. And I'm required to file that with ADEM on May 31st. We obviously have operating budget problems. I'll be frank with you on that. I'm not paying the trustee anything now. Okay, I can't afford to pay him anything. So that's one of the ways we're making up on our budget deficit. And there's a potential that the trustee may not be able to pay interest on the bonds because we're not paying him. this quarter. And we've submitted the application, we've got the grant money. Okay, the last bullet there, we've started the affordability study, work is being done. I want to have Eric back here next month. He'll make a presentation on his findings on what the affordability level is and how to best fund the customer financial assistance program. Okay? Next. Legal update, Alabama Village. You know, we need to work on that. Not too much else going on legal. Obviously, the stuff's going on in the Supreme Court right now, but I'm not party to that. It may impact me, but I'm not party to that. That's between the trustee and the existing board. Next, Jim. Okay, let's look forward. Okay, so by July 31st, I need to submit to ADEM and to the court what the future of Pritchard Water should look like. And what's that called is an alternative analysis. I'm going to look at numerous alternatives and determine what it looks like. So what have we been doing on that? Right now, we have a source supply study ongoing. We're looking at both surface water and groundwater. I met with the team yesterday. I ought to have something within another 30 days. I think surface water probably isn't going to work and it's going to be too expensive. So if we're looking at all our source supply here, it's going to be groundwater. And that's no surprise, I think, to anybody. Concession that we talked about a lot, 6 months ago, that's still alive. As an option, I'm meeting with the concession team Monday and have had multiple meetings with them over the last several months. Moz is certainly a player in this, and I've had very, very preliminary conversations with Moz. Most of my conversations with Moz have been about their bill and ability to pay it. But I've had some minor conversations about their role in the future. And then what I've decided to do is, and we have a representative from them here today, I'm going to be involved in the evaluation, but I also wanted to bring in another nonprofit to work with me on the evaluation. So it just isn't my thoughts. I mean, obviously, I want to get input from the advisory council, but there's a lot of analytical work that needs to be done on this. And I decided, rather than just doing it totally independently, Moonshot Missions, which is a very reputable nonprofit water group, they're going to work with me in the process on developing what would be the best alternative. Again, we need to have that to the courts and ADEM by the end of July. They will then review it. Now, the next slide's the one I really wanted to get to. Jim? Okay. Think of this as a matrix. There's 4 things we need to think about when we talk about what's Pritchard Water going to look like in the future. Who owns it? How's it going to be governed? How's it going to be operated? And what is our source of supply? Now, the thing we're doing right now with respect to the asset management study and determining how much we need to spend on pipelines and tanks and things like that, that's going to be common to all of those alternatives, regardless of who owns it, who runs it, whatever. We still got to replace the pipes and we still got to replace the pumps. So that's going to be what it's going to be. But these are the decisions that we need to make. So let me just briefly go down each list here. So from ownership, we could have Chickasaw or Pritchard back under city ownership. We could have it independent like it is right now. We could have Moz owning the system, or we could have private ownership, an investor-owned utility coming in.
I didn't get the last.
Private. So there's private water companies all across the country. I used to work for one for years who will come in and buy systems. And I will tell you, it is highly unlikely that any private owner would want to come in and buy Pritchard Water because of the condition of the system and the rates and the affordability issues. So that one, there'll be no investigation at all. I'm sure.
Likely to drive the highest cost. And it's likely to drive the highest rates. If somebody else comes in.
You'd have to compare that to the concession model as who's going to have the highest rates. But the concession owner is also a private public partnership. So you're absolutely speaking. That's the stuff. I'm just to start the discussion.
I remember you said groundwater.
Yeah.
You said,
Well,
have y'all thought about putting wells for into the city, you never thought about it. I know you mentioned it, but you didn't.
We've done hydrology to take a look at the yields of groundwater in the system. And we've got water quality data. And we're right now determining what treatment's going to be required. And so we're going to develop where the wells are going to be. We're going to develop what's it going to cost to build the treatment plan, and what is it going to cost to operate the treatment plan. So I need all of that information to do a proper analysis.
Now, my understanding is that, was it Odell or something, did that already?
We had some preliminary work. We're getting a little bit more information. We're talking to them again. We think it's going to be 2 well fields like he recommended. We think the most effective to take the 2 well fields and pump the wells to a common point where we treat the wells and then put it into the system. So yes, we're certainly using the information that's been
That's
developed.
already been done? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that's ownership. Okay, so there's probably only 3 viable in ownership: city, independent, and laws. And the city may not be something that the cities want, and that's a question for both Chickasaw and Pritchard on city ownership. Okay.
Now, if I could just think about it for a little while, I'm thinking like 50, 60, 70 years ago. One of that, the city of Pritchard itself, city council, really managed the water. Until they got a board, and I'll tell you what board we got. They got what and I tell you one thing, city is still responsible for the water system. Those people elected, they got people, they got an answer to the system. And a board don't have to answer to nobody.
Well, the majority of systems, water systems in the country are run by cities,
Yeah, that's true. Well, and
which is why I have to keep it on the list. Okay.
okay. My question is, if we're talking about putting a board back in place.
Now you're getting to my second column.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the first one, okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Have a question? The first column, okay.
It's entirely different from that, maybe you want to move on.
Well, why don't I get through it? Go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay, let me just get, okay, so the second column, remember the last meeting, we spent a lot of time talking about governance? Okay, so that's really important. So the governance options are, one, we just bring the existing board back. Okay, that's obviously one choice. Second is have what I call more like a public authority, where you have a board with requirements on the qualifications of people to sit on the board, things like that. That's a public authority. It's someone like Moss. But okay, third is if Moss is on the ownership role, you're under the Moss board. And fourth is investor owned, which is the same thing as private. They would respond to shareholders and all that. That's probably going to come out. So the 3 big under governance are status quo, the new authority, and Moss. Okay. Under operations, you have what I call independent, which is exactly the way it operates right now. It's independent from the city. It's independent from everybody. It just does its own thing. We could go back to that. We could go to the concession, where they're giving a bunch of money up front and bringing in a contract operator. Okay, that, we need to take a look. What? Well, the board, under that one, there still needs to be you're not giving up ownership, so there still needs to be a governance who manage the concessionaire. So it could be the existing board, it could be a new authority that manages the concessionaire.
That's just one of them.
This is just a matrix. Yeah.
That's what you said.
If you don't have the answer now, maybe next meeting, but how much extra is it costing the citizens of Pritchard for you and your group to be here?
I can give you that. In fact, my invoices are being posted on dickspritchardwater.com. You can see how much it cost me for dinner last night. $9.93.
You said so much. You said I was down here.
Sorry.
Did you get that? You want to get that word, you get that
Dick's,
information?
dickspritchardwater.com. It's a website which has every bit of information you need. It has all of the contracts on it. It has all of the judge's orders on it. It has everything that we produce. It has the minutes of the advisory council meetings on it. It has my monthly reports on it. Okay. Yes.
These are options that you're telling.
Yeah.
Now.
These are the options that I'm going to, what I'm really putting this up for is, one, to get you comfortable with what I'm looking at. And two, if there's other options that you think I ought to look at to this list, I'm happy to.
I can't hear you, sir.
So what I'm putting this up to explain the process that we're going to be going through over the next 3 months, what the options are, but also if you feel there's another option that I'm missing, I'll add it to the list here. Okay, so I have, really 3 governance options, really 3 ownership options. Under operations, 3 of them are contract operations. One is the concessionaire would come here, sign a 30 or 40-year contract and have an operating contract associated with it, give us some money up front, have Moz come in and run it on a contract operations, or just have a third party. There's a lot of people that do contract operations. So we can keep it the way it is, or we can go hire somebody to operate the system. And there's really 3 options. Now,
Yeah, excuse me for interrupting. Just to emphasize, the due diligence on all these alternatives is being done. It's.
go to the previous slide. The previous slide was the due diligence I'm working on right now. And I got 3 months, we got 3 months to come up with the answer. Okay.
40 years of legendary highway, you say, is better than forever, ever it's gone. So that's
Okay.
what I prefer.
Well, let's get numbers first, because the bottom line is we got to figure out what impact each of these is going to have on rates. That's huge. And that's not the only issue we're going to look at.
Okay.
But there's a lot of other issues beyond rates, but rates is an important part of it. There's a big financial analysis associated with this. Okay, so the last one is water supply. And the reason I have 2 water supplies up there on each option is ADEM and any good regulatory agency in any place in the country is going to require you to have redundancy in your supply. So if we find the groundwater supply is cost effective and works, we still have to maintain the interconnections with Moz, and Moz has to have enough reserve capacity, which costs them money, to be able to supply Pritchard in a case of a contaminated well field or something like that. Same as surface water. It's a nuance, but that's why I have both up there. Now, when we go to actually do the financial analysis and other analysis, we're not going to do it for both groundwater and surface water. By the time we do the analysis, I'll probably have already figured out that surface water doesn't work, and we're just going to do groundwater. So there's probably going to be 2 supplies, one of which is Moz and one of which is groundwater. We're going to look for.
Alternatively, we could be a second source for Moz as well. If we have access to that.
Yeah, the problem is that will never be economically feasible. Oh,
The pipe runs both ways.
the pipe absolutely runs both ways. Absolutely. We just wouldn't have enough capacity to make all that difference. But yes, your answer is absolutely right.
Credit either way.
Right. The only challenge you have there, the pipe runs both ways, but the problem is the elevation of their tanks versus the elevation of our tanks. So in some areas, the water can run.
There would be a limit,
Yes,
but it still goes both ways.
exactly.
Okay. My question is, does that redundancy happen with all water systems right now? So right now, Sarah Land is being backed up by Moz.
I don't know how it's being backed up, but it's a requirement in the state of Alabama and most states that there be a redundant source. So I can't.
So who is Moz's redundancy?
I can't even tell you that right now.
It
It could be, if you have multiple treatment plants from multiple sources, they consider that redundant. I don't know the Moz system well enough. I haven't had the conversations to figure out exactly, how it works. I'm being real frank with you, but one of the questions I'm going to ask them is we got to have the same level of reliability in all the alternatives. So if Pritchard has to have a backup supply, then Moz needs to have the same requirements. Okay, right. So you can see when you look at all this in the matrix, there's a lot of options. You can pick one from column A, one from column B, one from column C, and you gotta figure out, which one works best. So this is what's due July 31, and this is what I need to start needing. I have a lot of work between now and July 31 to determine what's best here, but I also need your guys' input. If there's anything that I'm not looking at, you need to let me know, because I don't want to be July, and I come to a meeting and somebody says, well, did you look at this? It's gonna be too late.
Not to get ahead of your slides, but this decision or recommendation comes as of July 31st. When's the likely go, no-go with that recommendation?
Okay.
Is that your next slide?
Great question. Now, well, kind of. It's a great question. So what happens is I submit this to the ADEM and I submit it to the courts. And obviously, the public's gonna have it as well. But they're the two bodies that are gonna rule on this. They are gonna take whatever time they need. And I just don't know, but I'm guessing a month or two.
It's
Yeah.
not 6 months or a year later.
No. Because then after that, go to the next slide. And this is also with the water consent order. No, where's the, do you have anything
I
about?
don't have anything.
Okay, so the next step after the alternatives analysis is what they call the TMF capacity analysis. TMF stands for Technical Management and Financial Capacity. So we will have picked a option, and we've kind of done the work at a 30,000 foot level. Now what we got to do is take it down to ground level and figure out, and I'm just going to use this as an example. Let's say Moz is somewhere involved in the solution. Well, what are the synergies between the two that would impact operating costs? So we got to do a deep dive on what the actual operating costs are for the system, and then do a detailed, what we call cost of service rate study to determine, given those operating costs, given where we end up on the bond debt, given, what would the rates be? Then you kind of need to compare those rates to the affordability analysis and determine, is there a gap? And can you close that gap given the affordability? If you can close the gap, then you have a sustainable utility. If you can't close the gap, then maybe the best alternative or best option, and it will be the best option, still doesn't get you where you need to get to, because financially it doesn't work. So I'm guessing July, and then maybe September, the courts and ADEM say, okay, look at this one. And then between then and the end of the year, we do the TMF capacity analysis, and then we see where we end up with respect to long-term sustainability of the utility.
So it'll be a decision made before we spend all the money that we talked about at the beginning of this.
That money needs to be spent regardless of the solution.
That'll be spent December 31st.
And, right.
So we'll have a decision while we're still spending it.
But what I'm doing, I'm not doing any projects that would be impacted by our decision. None of them. I know I'm throwing a lot out at you guys, but
It's like water, 800 years. 800 years, man, we broke water out there for, I don't know how many years. I always say, people keep that mill on the creek.
Yeah.
They move those people up the creek and clean up your water.
the problem you have is, we may be able to build a primary supply that we're going to use all the time, but to build a surface water treatment plant, which will cost tens of millions of dollars, and just use it as a backup, it's more cost effective to just periodically in an emergency open a Moz valve as your backup. We can't have both groundwater and surface water here. We'll price ourselves out of the ballgame. Wells may work alone, but both together will not work.
Am I misunderstanding, or we saying we must make a decision by July, is what we want to do?
Yes, we do. We are going to present an alternatives analysis with a recommendation by July.
Will it be a backup or just a primary? A primary recommendation, or will it be a backup recommendation? Just a primary.
That's something we could probably talk about. I think we have flexibility how we want to present it.
The reason why is because it would be interesting to see if both are solutions, which is the lower cost alternative to rates versus higher cost of infrastructure. And that's why I asked,
Yeah.
because you're going to want to run the ground, your
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is we'll have the cost for all the alternatives for good, but we may want to do a deeper dive on two alternatives, because that's where you get really specific. Yeah. So I believe we have flexibility.
John, all of your studies seem to be, in which they should, not criticizing, but understand. They all seem to be hyper-focused on the viability of utilities, which it should.
Right.
But where does that look at, how does that impact the viability of the city?
So, okay.
Where do they intersect?
Okay, so let me tell you, and that's a great question, because I have to make those decisions all the time. So one of the questions was, how big do we make the well field? Okay? Because this well field is going to be around for 20, 30 years, and Pritchard may grow. Okay? So how do we build growth into the well field? Now we have an interesting situation here, because we're probably going to build the well field at the current capacity within Pritchard, but as we take the leakage down from 60% to 15%, that's all of our growth, and that's a huge amount of growth available to Pritchard. So we think about that in our decisions, but clearly I'm going to need input from this group. But we're already thinking about we need to build growth into the equation, and unfortunately, it's easy to build it in here because the leakage is so high. Kind of weird, but that's the truth. Okay, Jim, I'm tired of talking. You want to talk about transparency?
I just as what I was doing was, Morris was asking if a copy of the PowerPoint would be available after this, and without everyone's part of the monthly report. Good question. So the receiver has been working the last 4 months, and it's one thing to do the work, it's another thing to be transparent about how the work's getting done. And so the responsibility of the communications function is to try to clear out and create opportunities to answer and to chase every potential inquiry. And there are as many inquiries as there are people in Pritchard. It's not necessarily practical, but that's what we would aspire to, is to be able to put the receiver in the position of being able to answer that. So among the things we've done in the last 4 months is we've had these meetings, and it's been good to see when we started downtown and moved back out here to where we live, where you work and where you play, we've got more attendance, and we need more of that as we go forward, because as more years here, more gets understood, and we can begin to work together and answer questions together instead of, expending energy independent of this group. So we want to work hard toward that. So we're going to continue to have the monthly meetings the third Thursday of every month, unless John decides to, go home to Jesus or something like that. We'll have to see. But the reality is we're obligated to that, and that's what we're going to do. We have prepared and sent out the summary of the meeting, what he's talked about from every meeting. It's all posted on fixpritchardwater.com. It's all there, everything that has occurred in each of these meetings, and it will continue to be there. We posted receiver report so that we're accountable to the judge. We're accountable to the people who are in Pritchard and Chickasaw, but we're also accountable to the court, because he's got to satisfy the requirements of the order that created the receiver. We launched the website. That's going to be our place for everything to land. So if you're looking for a place to go and get educated about what's happening and what has happened and what John is doing with all of the various contractors, that's the place to go. The fine print is there, so you can see that. And then, excuse me, $500 a month.
the water today.
Does that answer your question?
Probably.
And the fact of the matter is, the amount of information that's gonna be generated in the next 3 months will be substantial. And so for that amount of money, that value, we'll be putting a lot of content on the website to make sure it's publicly available.
And it's not only that, I've had a number of customers who contacted me through the website, and I'm able to respond directly to customers through that website.
So going on, from a transparency standpoint, the website for us is the place, but right here is where content occurs. And out of this content is the things that we try to represent and put out there for the public to have access to. We have asked and will continue to ask until we can't ask anymore for opportunities to go to neighborhood groups, community organizations. John and I are both willing to go to any church, any school, any neighborhood group, and share and talk and listen, because we want to do that. That's part of the transparency aspect of this.
But the judge said that it doesn't matter what we think. The receiver has the last say.
Well, that's the way the court established it, but that doesn't mean he shouldn't listen.
Doesn't mean that.
And that's the objective here. And it doesn't mean he shouldn't tell you what he's doing. And that's the objective. The receiver, I think what's interesting to me is we get about every month about 3 or 4 inquiries off the website. John contacts them directly, either by email or by phone number. And he reaches out and follows up. That includes customers as well as, I think maybe some of you might have responded there. We capture those email addresses and those phone numbers when they're provided. The receiver is accessible and responsive to members of this group. I would say to you, I hope you would echo back to us that if he's not answering your emails or following up on phone calls that this Citizens Advisory Council makes to him, then I'll get after him.
And he's bigger than I am.
We need to have that kind of rapport, and you need to give yourself permission to call him individually if something doesn't make sense in this setting and in this environment. That's key. So much can happen offline that can be productive, and it can feed the process and help him understand. We have been accessible and responsive to the media. It's our contention that the media can be an advocate. I know some of us probably have different views at different times of lives about that, but we do our best to tell the story straight and true and accurate and quickly with the media. So all that sounds like a lot, but what I'll say to you is I'm the flypaper. If there's more that we can do to be transparent, I'll listen to anyone for as long as you want me to listen to you to understand how we can be more transparent with this group and with the public. So please hear us. That's our point of view from a transparency standpoint. He is obligated by the order to be transparent and to be public about what's happening, because we all recognize it's a unique situation. It's complicated and it's got a lot of layers to it. And we're going to work very hard to keep communicating. So thank you. Any questions?
Just a statement. Last time I heard somebody word so about transparency, they got the entire neighborhood page about requisition of council approval. So I'm worried about that kind of stuff.
Well, thank you for that.
Okay. Okay,
But I do want to say something, particularly, it is important to have this website up and running and operating. That is probably one of the most important means of getting information to and from so many other people, not just what takes place here. But it's IT business, all of this. And for the amount of money that's being paid for it as well, I'm going to tell you, it could be a lot more to get it done. So no one should have, really have any concern with respect to that, or its importance. And because, again, it can be quite expensive. But it's not always about the money, though, it's about the impact that it has. I think it's, I just wanted to openly say, I think it's important that we have this site up and running and being able to meet the needs of so many other people who may have questions and provide the information that's necessary. But I wanted to say that openly, publicly.
Yeah, we actually have people on a national level coming to the website. Richard, you guys saw the AP article. You know, that was the Associated Press article on leakage. And that was in the Times, that was in the Washington newspapers, LA newspaper. So, you know, it's not, I think there's some opportunity here. If we can turn this thing around, there's some real opportunity for this. Okay. Action items, things you want me to take back and work on, you know, if not, you know.
The options that you have in the columns. It would be nice to know the pros and cons of each from your perspective. Because obviously we will have opinions, the public will have opinions as to pros and cons.
Okay.
It might help in getting to a solution to those, you know, by having a metrics of what those pros and cons are.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be really rather neat, but
Well,
you actually have started to do it today when you said this isn't going to work. This is low probability. And there's a metrics that is common to say low risk, low reward versus low risk, high reward. And what we're really looking for is some of your guidance on what are these items that have the least amount of risk to what we're really trying to do and the most opportunity, then a lot of risk and low opportunity.
so let me be brutally honest here. What's going to drive the feasible alternatives, or let's put it another way, what's going to drop some of the feasible alternatives from being feasible is the ability to attract capital. The ability to attract capital dollars. The ability to attract capital dollars. So one of the challenges you have with the private utility, or maybe even the concession, is are state agencies, EPA, ADEM, others willing to provide grant funds or low interest money to those types of entities. On the other hand, the governance entity has to have enough history and credibility to be able to attract the dollars as well. So one of the difficult things I'm going to have in this assessment is to determine the ability of each of these governance models and ownership models to attract capital. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, but you're going right where I was.
I know.
There's still be one that'll drive the greatest amount of capital, but it get us closer to nirvana faster, versus another alternative, which would take a very long time, and there's risks that come with time.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've been thinking about it.
And what I like to say at this point is that we're just grateful that you're going through the process. You know, whether it's up or whether it's down. This is the first time that we're having an opportunity to attend and participate in the process and to hear and to know what is going on with our money, because after all, it's our money. Now, I'm not an engineer, so I can't speak as an engineer. My background is political science and behavior science. So I try not to step out of line, but I do trust, as I have said to the judge and anyone else, that in terms of your expertise and what you are doing and how you are doing it, at this point, I applaud you. I applaud anyone that can come here into the city of Richard. I was born and reared here. And do what you are doing and go through the obstacles and things that you have to go through to get things done. But we, the United Concerned Citizens of Richard, ask you and thank you for turning over every rock.
Well, thank you.
And we will continue to work and support you and give you our recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
hopefully you guys recognize I don't
You
live.
know, I totally disagree with
Okay.
Appreciate what you meant.
Okay. But I mean, I don't live here, but hopefully you can tell from my passion you know, this is really, I mean, this is what I'm living right now. This is my life. So, you know, I hope we all solve this together. I don't have anything else. We actually will, as Jim said, we're going to give you the slide presentation. And if you go to the monthly receiver report, this month it's like 7 pages long. So we have text that goes along with all of these slides. So I encourage you to read that. But I thank everybody for their input. And Thursday, next meeting here, 2 to 4. Do you want to change location and or times? Huh?
What's the date?
Third Thursday in April.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Is it possible that we can rotate the times, that it's not always 2 o'clock? Sometimes it may be 10.
This group can decide on the times. I'm going to be here regardless. So you guys can decide on the time. Whatever you want to do as a group.
I'm sure in August, when here it's pretty hot. I would say this, you got to be consistent based time that we're doing. When you start flip flopping it, you just change the whole dynamics of everything. So I would say that you stay true to consistency.
Okay, thank you all. Appreciate it.